Zoom. All right. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to talk about some aviation and my current journey to get a pilot's license and how that's transitioned over to mobile home park investing. And it's interesting how many things can correlate between the two and how many skills and assets that apply to across the board, and how these lessons can really impact how one can um, further growth here in portfolio, work with partners, and what have you. A lot of life lessons. But again, so my name is Major Hilliard. I'm an international best-selling author. I'm founder of MH Estates Capital Partners. We acquire and purchase mobile home parks with value add strategies that we can turn around, revamp, redevelop these communities into beautiful living communities to then bring into a large portfolio for investors, sell and market, and have great returns, all while providing livelihoods and living standards that many of these hardworking people have never had before. And it's really we're changing people's lives and giving families the ability to have uh, the lifestyle that they wish they could have afford. So I'll move on in. So a little bit about myself, how I got into flying. So this all really started from working with my CFO, good partner, mentor, and friend, Larry Hoffman. He was really big into flying. He actually had his own aviation charter service for a while, and he's loves the idea of it. I've earlier on when I was younger, I loved the ability to, think that I could just go from place to place on my own without any real control or regulation. Uh, but ironically, there is plenty of regulation when it comes to flying and getting your license. But seeing that freedom and being able to move around freely and go at your own pace, it really attracts me into aviation. That's kind of where I started my journey. So I'm in the beginning stages now of getting my license. There's multiple different uh, tiers that you have to apply for and get strategic test or go through testing in order to have those new licensing requirements to move your way up the ranks. And it really just comes down to your end goal. And I realize there's a lot of crossover as well. And so, having that freedom and ability to move around, which is why everyone invests as well, is have that freedom, financial freedom. I just like to be able be able to call our own shots. And what's interesting too is one of my goals is to be able to drive just about anything legally. Anything with a motor, I want to be able to drive legally. So I have my motorcycles license, obviously regular vehicles license, motors license. I have my CDL Class A, so I actually had a trucking service there for a little while with my own authority. And then I've done excavators, all that other stuff. The only thing I have yet to do, which I'm starting now, which is planes and helicopters. But the only other thing I think that's going to be a real challenge to do is a crane and then a submarine and a commercial grade ship, which I don't foresee that happening. But we're getting close to the goal. I'm sure there's some other stuff I'll find out that'd be kind of weird I can learn. But yeah, if it has a motor, I want to be able to drive it and use it. I enjoy moving around freely. But yeah, so then again, why mobile home parks? Again, mobile home parks are recession resistant. No matter whether the economy is doing well or doing worse off, the demand for affordable housing continues to increase and the supply is either stagnant or decreasing, especially when it comes to mobile home parks. They are the most affordable living that you can have, even more than apartments, way more than apartments, motels, extended stays, what have you. They're the most highly desired, sought after in every market we go into. However, due to stereotypes and other regulations in some areas, they're actually being redeveloped faster than they are being developed, which we're seeing a change now recently, but they're still, as of right now, being redeveloped at a faster rate than they are at new development for mobile home parks. And so that's why each year they appreciate really with not much, with minimum effort. So how it started with the earlier inspiration of how I wanted to get into flying was again as a child. In fact, my uncle was um, he was a four-star admiral in the Navy, and prior to that, he was the air traffic control commander and captain of a USS and Eisenhower aircraft carrier. And so early on when I was young, around 11, 12 years old, we actually got to go on a tour of the boat, of the ship. And they took it was like a family day, all went out and they had a bunch of flybys and breaking the sound barriers with F-16 jets and Tomahawks. And I got to sit in the captain's chair as well and speak to him and take a private tour, and seeing that ability to fly around and just how, you know, fast they go, which is insane. And then just the ability and freedom to not, like with roads, you have to stay on the road. You cannot veer off. With trains, there's tracks. With boats, there's land. But in the sky, there's literally nothing other than tall buildings. There's nothing in your way, so you can freely move left, right, up, down, what have you. Obviously, there's regulations and safety procedures to keep from your elevation standards so that you don't run into either oxygen issues or pressure issues for for pressurized cabins or run into other air traffic, whatever. But having that freedom to be able to see everything and move either vertically, horizontally, forwards, backwards, however you want, that's pretty that's pretty awesome. And I definitely want to have that feeling for myself and family as well. And also, it's a time machine. Everyone says it allows you to get your time back. So imagine being able to travel to multiple properties in a day through multiple different states all throughout the east, southeast, and the Midwest really allows us to be a little bit more efficient and see a greater scope of the U.S. So yeah, again, earlier, as I stated, met Larry Hoffman, huge mentor, great family friend. He's our acting CFO. Made a lasting impact through his airplane and flying and pilot journey. He actually used to fly Joe Gibbs Racing and some of the Redskins and a bunch of movie singers and movie stars and what have you. And it's just interesting. It's a preferred method of travel for sure. Again, the goal is to be able to fly or drive anything or operate anything with a motor in it. And so I did get a CDL Class A, had a little uh, what do you call it, authority to have other crews and other drivers to go out and do our own dispatch service. But that's a story for another time. Learn a lesson on that one. So yeah, here's the biggest thing of crossover. So with flights, you always have to have a mission. There's a mission. So the type of plane or type of fuselage you have, the number of engines, the type of engine, whether it's a prop, jet, if it's a single piston, if it's dual prop, if it's a pusher or a puller, all of those things really depend on which one you pick based on your mission. And so my mission with investments in real estate was to have the least maintenance demanding, least management demanding, least maintenance asset I could have with the highest profit per effort. And mobile home parks for sure fits that bill. And the reason being is that you're renting the land. It's essentially a triple net lease. If you're not familiar with a triple net lease with commercial buildings on retail and office and industrial, they will actually rent the land, and then the end user or the tenant will build the actual building or lease the building out if it's already freestanding, and they pay their rent in order. They pay payments to the owner of the triple net for leasing the land that that building is on. And so when their lease is up, they either take down the building, renew their lease, or the owner of the land with the actual lease will get that building free and unencumbered. And so following that kind of model and seeing that early on in commercial real estate when I was acting as a commercial broker, I realized that the same model applies to mobile home parks and RV parks. However, with RV parks, those units can move freely. They're under their own power or their own weight and without special permits, anyone can operate and pull those homes out or dwellings out whenever they want. However, with mobile homes or manufactured homes, you have to have special permitting, you have to have a special truck, and it's quite costly and cumbersome to do so. So the average person is not able to move those homes around freely, which allows for better retention and demand for them because you can't move them around freely and have space for them. The demand for them is extremely high, and moving them is extremely rare because again they'd have to find a new place to put them. So yeah, when it comes to flying, you got to have you have to know what your mission is in order what to buy, what kind of training, the type of licensing, and again that crossed over with commercial real estate, and then also risk mitigation. So with when it comes to flying, you need to chart your course, and you've got to be able to look for weather patterns. You got to know how your fuel, how far, how many aviation miles you can fly in order to before you need to refuel. Your maintenance, make sure it's always maintained. And then obviously when you get there, you're going to have ground support. So you're going to need to have a vehicle to pick you up, lodging if needed, and then having the plane looked at. And then if you're going to leave, you have to have it actually flown back to the hangar that it was at originally, and you have to plan for all those costs. And if they stay over the pilot, you have to pay for the pilot and co-pilot if you have a co-pilot, in order to stay and have the plane in the hangar ready and waiting for you before you leave. So having all there's so much planning that goes into it, and I think that's the greatest takeaway here is that the amount of planning and prepping that goes in before you even use the key and open up your fuselage or open a door or turn ignition. The amount of planning that goes into that is extremely severe because you cannot afford to make mistakes. And that comes into firsthand when I get a property under contract and we're in due diligence. Before we close, I need to make sure I go through all my checklists and aviation. There's always a checklist for everything. You got to run down the checklist. And having that checklist and going through all of those exercises and seeing all the items that are verified and to make sure that we're getting a good investment with very minimal risk, it greatly correlates between the two. So we have our checklist of all the due diligence items, all the things that we look for necessarily before we feel confident enough to even start spending any kind of money on any kind of reports. And these reports would be your title work, obviously, to make sure title is clear. Your phase one environmental, which is an environmental study that would go in, test the ground, soil levels for any kind of impeding um, pollutants or doing research up to I think 40 to 50 years around the adjacent parcels to make sure they don't have any pollutants in order to give you a clear standing so that they don't have any kind of uh, future possible litigation through the EPA for cleanup of environmental risk. On top of that, you also have your ALTA survey to make sure you're not encroaching, your boundaries are correct, and that none of your mobile homes are encroaching on the boundaries or setbacks, or that you're encroaching on another property. Check for easements, see if there's any conservation areas, look for low-lying areas or floodplains. All those come into a condition, but before we even get to that point, we have a checklist of around 80 items or more that we have to go through and check off and make sure that it fits our bill and make sure that the risk is very minimal, the return is all there, the profitability and the value add component with the equity distribution back end is extremely high. So before we even spend a dime, just like in aviation, before you even push that ignition button, we've done all that work up front. We've done all that planning. We've done all that research to make sure it's a good investment before we even really start putting anything hard, cash hard, or putting a ton of effort and energy into it. And once we go through that checklist, just like with aviation, once you push that ignition button and the prop starts to spin or the turbines start to spool up, you know you're ready to go. And it's just simply going through the process, making sure there's no other big hiccups, and then you line it up and take off. And again, you've got to have reserves. So early on in my career, um, I had my first manager I hired for one of our first parks, mobile home parks that we purchased, and trained her, did really well. I went on the first trip that my wife and I could afford after investing, putting years of our life into our portfolio, dumping every penny we could, and just growing it like a domino, selling one and using those proceeds to buy a bigger one and expand and refi and buy more parks to where we got to where we are. And we hired that first manager, and I trained her myself. I trusted her. She was great. And then we left on our first trip with our daughter. She was about 1.5 years old, 2 years old. And that was the first trip we took. We used everything we could to make sure we're good. And when we left, that manager took the opportunity to launder about $30,000 in rent that month, which put a huge bind on us. We were out of country for 7 days, and she went around taking cash from our tenants and then taking the money orders, signing them over to herself, which is Ironic, that's how we caught her because she was going to the ATM and putting in money orders, and you could see the camera right in her face, and it was pretty dead to rights that we had her in court. But still, that put a huge hurt on us. We didn't have enough reserves to cover that, as well as any other kind of large hiccups. And so, not having that, we incurred a large late fee, and it took me about 4 months to catch up after that experience. So, we realized that we got to have reserves, just like with flying. You got to make sure you have more than enough fuel to get to where you're going, because if not, you're going to crash and burn before you even get to the runway. And that's the same thing with our investments. You got to make sure you have enough reserves, that you're able to plan it out efficiently. We always plan it out for a 5 year model, because our current model of hold term is between a 4 to 6 year term. We refi out all of our investment plus additional cash out for us and our investors within 24 months. But then we like to stabilize it between 4 to 6 years to build a portfolio large enough and stabilized enough to get top return. And so having those reserves allows you to get to the end result. If not, you're just not gonna make it. You're gonna come up short. And we've been really strategically good on that. And that was a great learning lesson early on in my career, not only for management but also reserves and accounting and projections and what have you. And that was a tough lesson to learn. But that's why we did it the way we did it. We learned on our own dime, and that's how we are where we are now. But um, also with flying, you've got to be able to keep your emotions in check, and that's the other reason for your checklist. Because when something goes wrong, just like with any investment, something's going to go wrong. Anybody that tells you, or any operator or fund manager or investor, anyone that says, "Oh, it just went free and clear, everyone paid their rent on time, we had no issues, and we thought there was no unexpected expenses, there was no hiccup, it was just beautiful emotion," that's a lot. They're lying. It doesn't matter what asset there is. There's always going to be an issue. There's always going to be a black swan event, a October surprise, whatever you want to call it. Something's going to pop up, and so you've got to be able to keep your emotions in check, stay calm, find the uh, find a resolution. And we always look for 3 or 4 resolutions to have an A, B, and C plan. Work through it and get it resolved. And just like with flying, you have your checklist. I remember Larry telling me a story that he was flying, and one of it and his alternator went out on the engines and lost one. And um, his wife was freaking out, and he's just like, "All right, give me the list." He's going through his list, and he sure enough followed his list. Now after about check mark 4, the engine spooled right up, and they just kept traveling along like nothing happened. And just keeping your emotions in check, it really puts pressure on you, especially when you're dealing with large investments, multi-million-dollar assets. You've got to keep your cool about you, level head, and that's how you can prevail. And then going through your checklist mentality, as I stated, just working through your resolutions, laying it all out on the table and figuring it out, and then that gets you through any kind of issues that you can come up about. And the same thing with flying is sometimes you got to alter your course, and same thing with investments. We might have to alter how we go about our management or the overall renovation, whether we go with used homes versus new homes. When you do the paving was a big thing. So you want to pave in series, or do the phase out in phases of your development, because you're going to destroy all the brand new work and hard work you did up front, because those trucks can weigh 80 to 100,000 pounds. And when they turn those homes on a dime, they can tear up brand new asphalt. And so you've got to be able to strategically look down the road and do it in phases and work your way back, all while keeping the tenants happy and everyone else, and keeping the performance all together, and the overall appeal and aesthetic of the community, uh, and working combination with growing out your tenant base at the same time. So, why mobile home park investing and why it works? So, we talked about earlier, my main goal was early on, and why I liked mobile home parks, is that it's the lowest form of management and maintenance than any other type of asset other than triple net lease, in commercial real estate. So it's extremely less maintain maintenance to maintain. The rule of thumb is the ground. Anything below the ground we maintain. There was an exception with lights, street lights, and electrical pedestals, but the golden rule is anything below the ground, and that can actually be mitigated as well further. So if you have direct bill water, meaning that the municipality or city or town or county runs water and has a water meter that bills directly to the tenant, majority of the time they maintain those water lines. And you can have that done with sewer as well. So ideally, the best case scenario, you have a city, town, or county that's maintaining all of the water and sewer lines under the ground. Then really all you have to maintain is electrical pedestals, lights, and paved roadways, and you're done. The rest takes care of itself. The demand we have for our homes and our communities is ever expanding. I don't think it's ever going to go down. And because of that, the value and need and demand for our homes continue to go up because we're the most affordable option with your home. If you think about it, our homes usually rent for and or have a combined mortgage sale or lease agreement for it for less than 60 to 70% of apartment buildings. But well, here's the value. Not only is it 30 to 40% less than current market rate of the same size a three-bedroom, two-bath apartment unit for a same size three-bedroom, two-bath manufactured home, but you also have your own yard, you have your own parking spaces, and you don't, and the best of all, you don't have anyone to your sides, above or below. Because I've lived in apartments and I've managed many, and I'm sure you have as well. Nothing's worse than having someone stomping their feet on you all day, or if you have your little children, they run around and the tenant below you is banging on the wall or hitting it with the broomstick, saying "Be quiet" and terrifying everyone, or having loud music, or barking dogs. The list just goes on and on. So having that your own space and your own place to roam and make the home your own and have your own yard and your own parking space is a huge value add. And so that's another reason why the demand is extremely high and why we have a lot of turnover from apartments turning over and going into our communities. The turnover rate in our communities for actual homes is extremely rare. And in fact, for a lot of our homes, the default rate is less than 3%. So once the tenants get in and because of the communities that we have and how we standardize them and the quality that we shoot for, um, we really have really low turnover, and people are very happy to live where they are. And I don't consider the community as stabilized or finished until it's somewhere I would be comfortable living and living with my family. And in fact, Bonnie and I, the first home we bought after we got married was a mobile home. It was a double wide. We lived there for about a year and a half before we ended up moving around to work on these projects. But yeah, until it's somewhere I would actually live at and be proud to live in, I don't consider it stabilized. And with all those things in the mind demand, or all those things combined, again, lowest maintenance costs, low management, high demand, ever appreciating, the return on investments are extremely high than normal assets because you have high demand, low maintenance, low cost, and they essentially they can appreciate every year with hardly doing anything to it. And it comes down to scarcity and law of supply demand, and the amount of demand for affordable housing versus the supply of new development, especially for mobile home parks, just doesn't work. All right, so with the MH States Capital Partners, again, we go for value add, strategic markets in the Southeast and Southern Midwest, mobile home park communities. And we look for and being a path of progress. So we look for towns and cities that we are comfortable with that hit all of our check marks for what we consider a good market. And we want to be in a project of growth. So the project of renovation or development, I should say. So we'll look at town and community development plans and see how they're mushrooming out and just get in front of it. So eventually, as it's growing, we can hit that path. And when again, it's a 4 to 5 year, 4 to 6 year hold period, so we can kind of look and hedge our bets against that in the future. So I appreciate you guys being on the call today. And if you're interested in moving forward or have any other questions, you can always speak with me via AI. There's Our AI is essentially myself. It's majorhillard.ai. And you can go on chat with my AI clone as much as you want. It'll answer. It actually talk to you. So you can actually click the mic button, talk to your computer or your phone, talk to it, and it'll use my voice and talk right back to you and answer the questions that you'd have just as I would. It's pretty freaky how close and accurate it is. I'll be doing these webinars twice a week, every week. So every Tuesday and Thursday. And then I also put out these recordings and small snippets and YouTube videos. And you go to our YouTube channel, so MH Estates Capital Partners YouTube channel, and you can see all these videos. Please look through, click the link, like and subscribe, so you can be up to date when new videos come about. You can also schedule a call with me if you like. I have a Calendly link that I'll put into the description of this video as well. And you can click that link and select a time that's best for you and have a call and answer your questions, because it's a really huge asset class that's really underranked, or is not really well known just because it's a little different. However, not only are you getting a huge income or huge revenue, you're providing a large impact for hundreds of thousands of people's lives. And each home that we renovate or deal with, or each community that we acquire, it affects between 5 to 7 people per home. So if you have a 100 pad park, it's at least 700, 800 people that you're affecting in a positive way. And we've done this time and time again. So yes, you'll with us, your investment not only get extremely great returns, but you're also improving hundreds of people's lives at the same time. And we really feel good about it. And we love all of our tenants. We love everywhere we go. And you can always sign up too through those quick scheduling call to do an on-site tour and walk through a community with us, and you can kind of see the developments firsthand. We're very proud of what we do. We're doing this for quite a while. It's a family business that we've now grown to where we can work with other partners, and grow out portfolios as large as we can, and really just scale this thing and get rid of all the slumlords in the U.S. So, yeah, I appreciate your time. Like and subscribe on all of our channels. I'm on LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Check out these webinars each week. Again, they'll be on the playlist for YouTube. You can click the link to schedule a call with me on Calendly. And you can also speak with my clone. Go do it. It's kind of freaky, but it's cool. I really enjoy it. Appreciate your time. All right. Chattanooga. All right, cool. I see you, Roxana. Cool. Thank you. Thanks for coming on. I know Larry, thanks for coming on, and everyone else. I know there's a bunch remotely. But yeah, love to answer your questions. Come on every week. If there's anything particular you'd like to ask me, go ahead and ask. But otherwise, reach out to me and let's have a talk or speak to my clone. But I hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend, and I'll speak with you soon.